All right, let's get talking about borrowed harmony. Sometimes this is known as parallel harmony, but borrowed as a term comes up a little bit more often. The term borrowed harmony comes from the fact that if we're playing in a major key, we are borrowing chords from the parallel minor key, hence the term that also works, parallel minor. If I'm in a minor key, I'm borrowing chords from the parallel major key. Allow me to explain. So, if we're in C major, as many of you know, going through all these white note chords, these are our options in C major. If I now go through C minor, let's say C natural minor, I have a different set of chords available. So one common thing that you'll see is within a chord progression, this works a lot in cinematic music, but also like bands like Radiohead do this a lot. One chord, maybe two, will be substituted from that parallel key. So if I'm in, let's say, C major, and I'm playing 1 to a 4 to a 5, and then back to a 1, something that you'll see is something like this. Major 1 to a minor 4, and then still the same 5, G major, and then back to C. You see this a lot in this sort of romantic sounding progression where there's like C major, F major, F minor, and then back to C. This is even from Mario, this whole, right? So that's one of my favorite little sort of cadences for anything romantic and sort of melancholy at the end. So I use that a lot in cinematic progressions in various ways. So in that case, we're taking the 1 chord from C major, the 4 chord from C major, changing it to the 4 chord from C minor, and then we're back to C major. Let's try a couple other progressions using C major and C minor as our two main keys. This time, let's try a 1-4-1 chord progression in C minor, but we're going to borrow the 4 chord. So instead of playing F minor, we're going to play F major. We're going to borrow it from C major. So it sounds like this: C minor to F major, and then back to C. This is used a lot in Marvel movies. It has a very heroic sort of sound. So one of my favorite movements is like C minor to A flat major. This sort of 1 to 6 or 1 to flat 6 chord progression. You can put in lots of variations to sort of color it. But what you'll hear in Marvel movies is this 1 minor, flat 6, major, and then they borrow that 4 chord from the major key. So it sounds like this. Very heroic sounding. So we've borrowed the 4 chord from the major key. So something else that's kind of cool is if you consider that C minor and E flat major are relative keys, so C minor has the same set of notes as E flat major, then you could do this whole major 1 on E flat, major 4, minor 4, and then back to a major 1. So we're just trying that same progression, but instead of in C major, we're trying it in the relative major of C minor. So C minor's relative major is E flat 1, 4, minor 4, 1. This is a unique chord right here, this A flat minor, that we can now sort of pull back into C minor. If it's available in E flat major, why can't we make it available in C minor? So we might get something that sounds kind of like this: 1, 3, and then a flat 6 minor. This gets used sometimes in like Disney progressions. I think the song that comes to mind is Remember Me from the movie Coco. So feel free to go through that, but it has at some point, while it's in C minor, it has this really unique A flat minor chord. And I remember thinking in the moment, I'm like, how are they justifying that? Well, I think it's coming from the frame of thought of E flat major, the relative major, and going to that 4 chord and borrowing from that other parallel minor key. So in this case, E flat minor's 4 chord. It's getting kind of advanced because we're going like layer into layer of relative keys and all this other stuff, but I'm just showing you that you can think outside of the box once you've already thought outside of the box. If you understand borrowed or parallel harmony, you can then start to think about how do keys relate and how can I borrow from those keys. It does give some kind of adventurous results, but that's what we're here for. So let's say you took something like C major, right, and you're doing an open voiced chord to F minor, okay? So it has this bittersweet sort of sound. combining borrowed harmony and open-voiced chords. The point of this course is to be able to give you all these little modules that you can work with while you're improvising. I can't show you every way that all of these combine because it's probably infinite or nearly endless. So make sure that you're experimenting with different combinations based on which techniques you like the most. So 1, 4, and 5 are really common chords within any progression. We've done a lot of 1 to 4 variations where the 4 is borrowed. Let's try some 5s that are borrowed. If I'm in C major, 5 is G major. Let's make it G minor, so it would sound like this. This, to me, sounds very kingly. It sounds like it comes from the Mixolydian mode, but we're thinking of it as something borrowed from C minor. So it ends up sounding kind of like this Lord of the Rings. If you've watched the movies, you might recognize that sound. So again, very kingly, but if we take C minor, there's really no sense borrowing the 5 chord from the major, because in C minor, we have natural minor scales, which give us a minor 5 chord, and we have harmonic minor scales, which give us a major 5 chord. So one way or another, if we're playing C minor to G major, we're generally not thinking of this as borrowed harmony from C major because it's actually available in C harmonic minor. But having said that, let's say you're playing a chord progression that is in C natural minor and you do this for a while and then you borrow from C harmonic minor, you can take these minor scales and their different variations and sort of pivot between them. It's sort of like a nod to borrowed harmony, but I don't know that it would exactly be classified as borrowed harmony. So my tip to you is to write down all the chords, for example, in C major and all the chords in C minor, maybe both natural and harmonic. Play around with one of the progressions you're working with and start swapping out one of the chords for a chord from the borrowed key. So for example, if your chord progression is 1, 6, 4, 5 in C major, maybe the 6 comes from C minor. Maybe the 4 comes from C minor, or the 5 comes from C minor. Let's try those out to finish up this class and see which one sticks and sounds the best. Let's go for it. 1, borrowed 6, 4, 5, again kind of Marvel-esque. 1, 6, borrowed 4, 5, back to 1, that one works. 1, 6, 4, borrowed 5, back to 1. I think my favorites were the 1, borrowed 6, 4, but I wouldn't go to the 5, or 1, 6, borrowed 4, and still I wouldn't go to the 5. I think they sounded great, even on their own. But again, it wasn't until we experimented with this that we were able to come up with the sound that we like. Also, if you want to do a lot of songwriting moving forward, start to experiment with a lot of the basic chord progressions, do as many borrowed variations as you can think of, and create a notebook where you put in your more unique chord progressions and how you think they work in terms of evoking certain emotions. This is really important for cinematic composers to be able to make sure that when they're seeing a scene, they understand the emotion and they can instantly or nearly instantly think of the harmony that they want to apply to that scene. At least as a starting point. We don't want to have the same tricks in every film, but it's good to know how certain progressions evoke certain emotions. So that's it for this class on borrowed harmony. I'll catch you in the next class where we're going to talk about two-handed arpeggios. I'll see you there.